Fluid motion is produced when there is a threshold level of wholeness during the swing. It is not produced when wholeness is broken. That's it. Now, you watch golf on TV, and someone misses it right, someone misses it left. Well, guess what? If wholeness is broken, which means the flow of intelligence between the mind and the body is compromised, anything can happen during that swing. They could double-cross themselves. They could be too shallow. They could be too steep. They could leave the club face open. They could hang back on their left foot. Something is going to happen because that's why they missed it. The question is not what happened. The question is, why did it happen? So if you go to the superficial understanding of trying to dissect what happens in a poor swing, you will be living on a superficial understanding of golf for the rest of your career.
Golf Smarter number 789. And a quick note about today's episode. Throughout our conversation, you may hear a rhythmic clicking noise. FYI, that's not a problem with your speakers or your headphones. It's our guest tapping his fingers on his big, plush, comfy chair. The Fluid Motion Golf Factor and Reading Your Fluid Cues with Stephen Yellin.
This is Golf Smarter, sharing stories, tips, and insights from great golf minds to help you lower your score and raise your golf IQ. Here's your host, Fred Green.
Welcome to the Golf Smarter podcast, Stephen.
Fred, it's a pleasure to be here.
It's a pleasure to have someone like you on here. This is big time stuff for Golf Smarter because you've worked with a lot of golfers that we've heard about, right?
Correct.
You want
I
to
have.
share? Can you share some names, or is that not fair?
No, I've worked with, let's see, Lee Jansen, Robert Allenby, Scott McCarron. I'm working currently with Gabby Lopez. I spent a little time with Mike Weir. I spent a lot of time with Trevor Immelman. So that should do it.
Yeah, that's pretty good. And you have a great couple testimonials on your website. Scott McCarron had some really wonderful things and impactful things to say. I watched the video a couple times taking notes, like, oh, that's really important stuff to know. Because,
yes.
Yeah, fluid motion factor in your website is fluidmotiongolf.com?
That's correct, yes,
Yeah.
fluidmotiongolf.com.
Right, but the fluid motion factor is, we talk a lot about, and that's why we call it Golf Smarter, about the mental game, but this is not sports psychology, what you're doing.
No, I have no background in sports psychology. The only sports psychology book I ever read was actually the origination of sports psychology, at least that I'm aware of, and that's The Inner Game of Tennis by Galway in 1975. The fluid motion factor, though it's a mental training program, doesn't have anything to do with sports psychology. It has to do with setting up the environment so that one very specific process in the mind can happen that allows one to be consistent and allows one to sink a swing, control distance on wedges and putts, find the slot on the way down, and every other thing you can think about about a golf swing.
And I'm curious. So you have golf instructional training. Am I correct in that? Are you a PGA certified teacher?
I am not.
You're not. I love that. You're playing by your own tune here.
Yeah, the whole program is completely original that I have developed over a vast amount of years.
And tell me how it developed and when you realized that this is something that you can share with other golfers.
Yeah, well, I'll tell you the whole story, Fred.
Oh,
Because
please.
you seem
like
to be
stories.
you seem to be a good guy. Okay.
And you come
All right.
highly recommended.
So my background actually is not in tennis, is not in golf. It's in tennis, and I grew up in the great state of Florida. Had a good junior tennis career. Was Florida State singles champion. Member of the championship team. Went on to have a good career playing number one singles at University of Pennsylvania. Member of the All-Ivy team 1 year. even had a win over McEnroe in a college match.
Congratulations.
But thanks. He still, that still harms him psychologically. But when I was a senior at Penn, I had this extraordinary experience that changed my life, literally, and led to the development of this program. And it was in a challenge match against a fellow Penn player, and I fell deep, deep, deep into a space I never experienced before, a deep zone experience. And, I was sort of in the middle of the food chain of national junior and national collegiate tennis. I'd go to the nationals every year, win a couple rounds, but then that would be it for me. But for this 1 hour, I experienced what these great top 10, top 5 players experience. And the experience was overwhelming freedom. I could do whatever I wanted to do whenever I wanted to do it. And it was ridiculously simple and easy to do. And I sat down after the match, and literally I couldn't move for 10 minutes. I was so overwhelmed with this experience. And I knew that my life was never going to be the same after having this experience. I didn't know where it would lead, how far it would lead, what the goal would be, what the ramifications would be, but I knew my life would not be the same because sports was such an integral part of my life. So I got up, and I had to figure it out. I had to understand why I had this experience, and I knew it was way below the radar. I knew it was something that no pro had ever explained to me or taught me. And I was on it for 24/7. I couldn't let it go. Finally, after the second or third day, I woke up, and I figured the whole thing out. It was black and white. There was no gray area whatsoever. I knew exactly why I had this experience. I knew exactly the circumstances that led to having this experience. And I was 21 years old at the time, and I thought, maybe a year or two, maybe 3 years to figure out a program to at least make, and I wasn't even playing golf at the time, to at least make tennis players more consistent and give them the opportunity occasionally to have this kind of experience. Well, I was a little off in the calculations, time calculations, Fred. It did not take 2 or 3 years. Literally, it took a lifetime. I feel that I closed the book on the program maybe a year and a half, 2 years ago, and I had the zone experience in 1975.
Wow.
And the reason why it took so long is that the arena from where zone experiences are generated from is a very, very subtle arena. It has its own nuances, it has its own laws of motion, and if you violate those laws of motion, you will not have that experience. So it took a lifetime to understand those nuances and those laws of motion from every conceivable angle.
Oh, really? You're just going to stop there?
Ask me a question. Oh, you want to know what that arena is? Is that it?
Well, we'll get there. Yeah. What is the arena? I was just actually thinking about the correlation or the significance of the connection between golf and tennis, and why tennis players have come to golfers with some really some amazing revelations on how to get to that place.
Well,
there are a couple of you.
Yeah, the place is the same for every athlete. It doesn't matter what sport. The body does not care whether you're generating a golf swing, hitting a serve, throwing a curveball, shooting a free throw, slalom, ski slalom, any sport. Because the dynamics of producing fluid motion are the same. And I'll explain those dynamics. I'm glad you asked. Okay, here we go. So
this is going to be easy.
Very easy, okay. It's really easy. In order to produce emotion, any motion, whether it's walking across the street or hitting a golf ball, you have to generate a signal, an intention in the brain. Now, there are two parts of the brain that are really interesting in producing motion. One is called the prefrontal cortex, which is the front of the frontal part of the brain. It oversees all processes in the brain. It essentially, it's the discriminating intellect, and it's called, rightfully so, the CEO of the brain. The other part of the brain is the motor system. Now, when someone produces a fluid golf swing, during the 1.5 seconds it takes to generate that motion, the signal bypasses the prefrontal cortex, which means the intellect goes offline, goes right to the motor system, and it's the motor system which communicates with the body to produce motion. The problem occurs, and it's a huge problem, especially if you're a professional golfer, is when the PFC or the intellect goes online and delays moving that signal to the motor system. Then in the middle of the motion, the body is looking for direction from the mind, from the brain. There's too many processes going on, and that's when the bulkier core muscles dominate the motion. So this good process, when the signal bypasses the prefrontal cortex and goes right to the motor system, I call the fluid motion factor. It's not my process. In many ways, this is not even my program. I did not invent how fluid motion is produced. It's everybody's process, and it's everybody's program.
Fascinating. Fascinating. Let's take a quick time out. We'll be back to talk more about this. Stephen, let's get on to the recreational golfer, because that's who I really like to think about when I'm having these conversations, because that's what I am. I'm not a PGA teacher. I'm not a professional. I'm just a weekend hack, and I just have a bunch of questions. So let's talk about the impact of fluid motion golf and the fluid motion factor, and how it can influence, help, assist, be part of the life of a recreational golfer.
You know, about 20 years ago, a friend of mine who is a neuroscientist who worked with two Olympic teams, Norway and Denmark, and published his research, really groundbreaking research on the brain physiology and sports performance, told me something that completely, really, essentially blew my mind. And he said, you know, Stephen, once someone has grooved a motion, that motion can't break down. What breaks down is the ability to access it. Mm-hmm. And it didn't strike me as that profound when he said it. And then 2 days later, there was a nuclear explosion in my brain because I understood the ramifications. That once a motion is grooved, in other words, once a golfer grooves a motion, and golfers know whether they've grooved their motion or not. We're not talking about beginning golfers. We're talking about golfers that go out, maybe twice a week or, 4 times a month, once a week or whatever, and have a decent repeatable swing. Doesn't have to be a PGA swing. Once that motion is grooved, and they know it's grooved, they go to the range, they drop a bucket of balls. Yeah, I'm hitting the ball more or less the same all the time. The motion can't break down. Now, the ramifications for this eventually will change the golfing industry. It will change how golf is taught. It will change how golf is understood. And for sure, it will change how golf is played. The motion not breaking down once it's grooved means you do not have to reinvent the wheel on every shot. Now, most golfers, I would say 98%, that's a pretty large percentage, they're in swing prison. If you're listening to this, you're in swing prison. Yep. You know exactly what I mean, okay? What does it mean? It means a few things. One, you're going to the course every day, and you're just hoping you swing well. Two, when you miss a swing, or when you miss a shot, immediately you go to the swing. What happened in the swing? And now we're talking about every level of golfer, PGA, LPGA, European, Asian golf tour, it doesn't matter. When someone misses a swing, what is the first, where do they go? Well, something happened in my swing. I took it too far on the inside, too far on the outside. I was too quick in the transition.
I lifted my head.
I lifted my head. I didn't transfer my weight. All of these things. They are, and you, listener, are dancing on a superficial understanding of motion. And because you're on a superficial understanding of motion, most likely you will never reach your potential in the game. And most likely there will be rounds where you will be extraordinarily frustrated But because of the 3 or 4 shots, good shots that you hit, you'll come back. But what do you do in between? You try to dissect your swing again. You try to figure out, well, why did I snap it? Why did I, just hit it OB on the right? Why did I slice it? Why did I do this? The thing is the environment and the understanding you're living in is not profound. It is not profound. This is not Stephen Yellin talking. This is not a philosophy. This is a neurophysiological phenomenon. Now, golf is a very convoluted motion. It's not really a natural motion. Someone who wants to repeat throwing a baseball can do that 10,000 times in a row. Someone who wants to repeat a golf swing, there are more subtle processes that need to be accessed in the brain physiology in order to repeat a solid swing. This is the great allure of playing golf, is that when you hit a good shot, you feel like you accomplished a major thing. So the processes in the brain physiology, which are extremely specific and extremely universal for every golfer, for every play, it doesn't matter if you are a 24 handicap or you're Dustin Johnson. It makes no difference. You are going to produce a fluid golf swing exactly the same. Of course, it's going to be on a higher level, the result, for a Dustin Johnson than a Sam Johnson, but the processes in the mind are identical. Now, number one, do people know that once muscle memory is established, it can't break down? What breaks down is the ability to access it? No. Does anyone on the PGA Tour know that? Lee Jansen, no. Well, he's on the Champions Tour. Scott McCarron, no. They don't know it. Do they understand the processes in the mind, which are very simple, that allow a swing to be synced? No. They don't know it. Do they understand the environment that the brain physiology has to experience in order to access these processes? No. They don't know it. So what do? It's crisis management every week. It's throwing darts every week. It's trying new things every week. It's living in a, I'll tell you what it's like. It's like you're playing blackjack at the Bellagio every week. You don't know what card is going to be dealt. You're just hoping. You're sitting with 14. You don't get a face card, you get a 7, right? But you're just hoping. You certainly don't have control over which card is going to be dealt. But the interesting thing is that you can have 4 times as much control as you have right now. I'm being conservative. I'm not trying to use a hyperbole. 4 times. Because the environment, the brain physiology, needs to experience in order to produce a fluid motion is actually a very simple environment. And every golfer knows it. Fred, you know it. Okay. Fred, I want you to give me one word. Oh, you do know it. You just don't know you know it, okay?
Yeah.
I want you to give me one word that describes how you felt when you played your best golf. You have one word. How it felt inside.
Surprised.
Give me another word.
The day that I played my best golf, which may not...
Now, surprise is a reaction, okay? Surprise is not an experience, okay? What did it feel inside?
There was... No, that's already 2 words. Calm.
Okay. So this is the environment the brain physiology has to experience. I've asked hundreds of golfers, including golfers who have won major championships. They all give the same thing. Simple, easy, effortless, calm. It's always the same. Mm-hmm. So that's the environment. Now, the $64,000 question is, how do you experience that? Because your career round just showed up by chance. You had no idea it was going to show up.
None.
And once you had it, it left as quickly as it showed up, and you had no idea how to get it back.
Absolutely.
And where did you look? Well, what was I doing with my hands? What was I doing with my body? What was my tempo like? What was this? Am I right or wrong?
Oh, you're absolutely right.
Well, you're dancing on the surface, Fred. Do you want to dance on the surface, or do you want to understand the fundamental reason why you played golf?
I'm going to understand that reason right after this. Our latest episode of Radio Baseball Cards features a 1987 conversation with New York Mets pitcher Ron Darling, who most recently has furthered his career in baseball as a network analyst for TBS and Mets broadcasts. Darling is one of the few ball players who was born in Hawaii and went to an Ivy League college. The last team he played for was the Oakland A's, and I had a chance to travel with the team a couple times in the mid-'90s, and I always remember after a Yankees game back at the hotel bar, Ron had his nose buried in a book, which really stood out in that environment. You don't see a lot of avid readers playing pro baseball.
Here's another radio baseball card. Growing up in New England, Ron Darling's favorite sports heroes were hockey players, so baseball was the furthest thing from his childhood fantasies.
I played baseball when I was littler. My dad coached almost all the teams I was on, but I never wasn't the best player as a lot of these kids grow up to being. I was always an infielder.
If you're a fan of baseball or of history, or especially of baseball history, follow us and enjoy these amazing and amusing stories as told by the greatest players of the 20th century. That's Radio Baseball Cards with Don Drysdale from wherever you find your favorite podcasts. Stephen, it's actually really true. The time that I played my best golf, that everything was working, I wasn't like overthinking it, and there was a deep sense of calmness to me,
right?
But was also followed by, and I don't mean minutes after, I mean like the next few rounds. What did I do right? How did I do that? And things just fall apart. I'm overthinking, and I'm feeling lost after that. It's like,
that's right.
How did I do that?
You know, there's a term for this, Fred, okay? It's called the dark night of the soul.
Ooh, ouch.
It's dark.
It is dark indeed.
It's the dark. You get this brilliant illumination of light, and you're just basking in that light, and then the darkness comes. And the contrast is so great that you almost wish you didn't have the light to contrast it. Okay, so let's talk about this environment, okay, because this is very important.
Yes.
There is a very specific environment that a human being, I can't speak for aliens, okay? I can't speak for them. The Greys, I don't know about the Greys, okay? That the brain physiology has to experience in order to produce a fluid golf swing. It's universal for Dustin Johnson and for Sam Johnson, right? And for Fred Green. It's universal. That environment can be best summarized using one word: wholeness. The brain physiology needs to experience a threshold level of wholeness in order to sink a swing. So this sounds like a very abstract term, but it's not. And let me try to make it more concrete. Everyone has made a smoothie eventually, sometime in their life. So what do you do when you make a smoothie? You put a banana, raspberry, apple, a pear, and you hit the blend button. Now, after you hit the blend button, if you could see the outline of the banana from the other elements of the fruit, you don't have a smoothie. Now, let's switch to golf. Every time you hit a golf shot, you make a golf smoothie. You're behind the ball, and you take into consideration, especially if you're an elite golfer, but even if you're an average golfer, you still have to take into consideration a number of factors: your lie, your club, how you want to hit it, the wind, the temperature, any other ingredients you want. You put all of this into a golf smoothie. Now,
I'm wondering how you were going to get to golf from the smoothie.
Now, if right before you pull the trigger, you're over the ball and you're about to pull the trigger, if you have not made a golf smoothie, meaning one element is not pulsating over another element, don't hit it left, don't hit it right, don't hit it long, don't hit it short, get the club in this position. If one element is pulsating past a threshold level which will overshadow the other elements of your smoothie, like the banana, you see the outline of the banana. If you have not experienced a threshold level of wholeness before you pull the trigger, what chances do you really have of experiencing wholeness during the swing? The cerebellum is the king of the swing. No one knows about the cerebellum. The cerebellum does two things. One, it tracks where emotion is and where it has to be in order to complete the swing. Then it has the ability to self-correct. Meaning if you're at the top of your swing and you know you're not in a good position, if you've accessed the correct use of the cerebellum will liquefy the body enough to bring the club back to square at impact. The cerebellum also smooths out all the parts of the swing. So you will play as well as your cerebellum is going to allow you to play during that round. The cerebellum needs to exist in a state of wholeness, an environment of wholeness, or else it's compromised. So if you're right before the ball, you're about to pull the trigger, and you have not made a smoothie, and there is not a threshold level of wholeness, during the swing there will not be a threshold level of wholeness, because before you pull the trigger essentially is going to dictate what you're going to experience as far as wholeness during the swing. The cerebellum is challenged. So usually at the transition, you go into crisis management mode on the way down. You don't know what the club is doing because there's not the correct flow of intelligence between the mind and the body. And you're at the blackjack table at the Bellagio. So the first thing that any golfer needs to learn, including beginning golfers, especially beginning golfers, because they don't have any money in the bank, they don't have any muscle memory, is to set up the environment so the cerebellum can start working effectively. Now, let's look at golf instruction. How is golf taught? Golf is taught that in parts, if you want to change something, you have to put your attention on that part. Now, by doing so, for 99% of the time, when you're about to pull the trigger and you're over the ball, where's your attention? Well, it's on the part of the swing that you're working on, or that you want to change, or that you think you have to execute properly in order for all the other parts of the swing to work like a domino effect. You are completely sabotaging yourself.
Wow.
You are living in the world of mediocrity. You are living in the world of purposely trying to break wholeness as systematically as you can.
Wow. Phenomenal.
This is not Stephen Yellin. This is neurophysiology. Now, let's go back to when someone plays really well. Let's say your stellar round, right?
Mm-hmm.
Why does everyone always use the same adjectives? Calm, easy, simple, effortless. What they're saying, without saying it, but I know what they're saying on a deeper level, I experienced a deeper level of wholeness before I pulled the trigger. Therefore, I experienced a deeper level of wholeness during the swing, which means the process is actually controlling the swing, that those dynamics were working on a more sophisticated level. End of story.
Phenomenal story. Oh, it makes so much sense because, yeah, you do hear your mind going on and on about the little things that you've got to work on. And again, it's a sabotage, right? It just explodes the whole
100%.
thing. Amazing.
100% sabotage. There's one question that every teacher and every player needs to be able to answer. If they cannot answer this question, They will be throwing darts every week, changing swing thoughts, changing instructors, memorizing the tips of the month in the golf magazine, recording Golf Channel for their golf videos and everything. They'll be looking for that for the rest of their life, spinning their wheels, essentially. And the question is very simple, Fred. How is fluid motion produced and why does it break down? That's it. The buck stops there. Fluid motion is produced, and again, this is for people who have a groove swing. Fluid motion is produced when there is a threshold level of wholeness. During the swing, it is not produced when wholeness is broken. That's it. Now, you watch golf on TV, and someone misses it right, someone misses it left. You right away, you got Nick Faldo and Jim Nantz or whomever, you know, the Minolta Biz Hub camera, blah, 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 blah. Well, guess what? If wholeness is broken, which means the flow of intelligence between the mind and the body is compromised, anything can happen during that swing. They could double cross themselves. They could be too shallow. They could be too steep. They could leave the club face open. They could hang back on their left foot or the right foot, or, you know, whatever. Something is going to happen because that's why they missed it. The question is not what happened. The question is, why did it happen? So if you go to the superficial understanding of trying to dissect what happens in a poor swing, you will be living on a superficial understanding of golf for the rest of your career.
Take one more time out. I may have you stick around a little bit longer, but we'll take a time out right now. We'll be back right after this. Stephen, you've mentioned something a couple times, and I'm really curious to get your thought on the term muscle memory. Does it exist? Is it real? Some people say your muscles have no memory. That's ridiculous. And others say it's the real deal.
Well, muscles, if you're gonna look at it from a literal perspective, obviously don't have any memory. Muscle memory is located in the part of the brain known as the basal ganglia. And muscle memory is like saving money in a savings account. Let's say you want to save $10,000, right? So you go to the bank, you open up an account, you start putting your money in, $100, $200, $500. Finally, you have your $10,000. Now, you go to the bank on Tuesday, your money is there. It's in your savings account. You go to the bank 2 years from now, your money is there. You go to the bank 10 years from now, your money is there. Muscle memory is exactly the same. Once you grooved a motion, and of course the key phrase is groove, which means you can repeat the motion on the range. We're not talking about pressure. That's a whole, on the course, that's a whole nother animal. We can talk about that if you want. But once you grooved a motion, and golfers know whether they've grooved a motion. Come on. They're smart people. Once you grooved a motion, the money's always in the bank, which means that if you're a 5 handicapper and you go out there and you shoot a 92, you just didn't access your money in the bank. When you go out the next day and you shoot a 77, you access your money in the bank. So there are rules of the bank. There are rules of accessing your money in the bank. They are neurophysiological rules. They are not sports psychology rules. They are not psychology rules. They are neurophysiological rules. And you can try to boil water at 200 degrees. You think you can believe that water is going to boil at 200 degrees. Water is not going to boil at 200 degrees. It has to go to 212. If you don't repeat a motion, it's because you violated the law of motion, laws of motion. And essentially, there's one basic law of motion, and that is you broke wholeness. You broke wholeness. Something broke wholeness, either before, or if not before, then during. End of story. That's it.
So Stephen, what is your workflow process with a student? You work with them on the course? Do you work with them off the course? What is it that you do with them?
Every student goes through the same program. If I was going to, because fluid motion is produced identically, it's not, if I was going to have a clinic, 4 people in the clinic, Dustin Johnson, number one player in the world, okay? A good college player, a good high school player, and a guy who wants to break 90 more than 4 times during the summer, right? They are all going to get the same information, exactly the same information. So the way the program flows, in person, you can either work with me in person or I have an online program, is the first thing is an overview of what we're talking about now, a whiteboard presentation on how fluid motion is produced and why it breaks down. Then that's the end of the long talks because this is not a philosophy. Then we go to the range. And the program is divided into 4 sets of what I call fluid cues. Fluid cues set up by design, what a golfer normally experiences by chance when they play their best. So we go through these 4 sets. Each set gets more powerful. So the second I feel is more powerful than the first, the third more than the second, etc. Then we go to the course because range golf has nothing to do with golf on the course. It's a different sport. You get one ball, right? You're looking at 75 balls on the range. Hogan said it, the difference between golf and competitive golf is the same difference between literally hockey and tennis. This is a famous quote that he had because it's a completely different environment. So there's a learning curve every golfer goes through when they go through the program. Range, course, tournament golf, or competitive golf, or if you don't play competitive golf, at least golf on the course, because it's very subtle. And in many ways, you're old enough to appreciate this. When someone goes through the program, yeah, you're not a young guy, okay? You're not 29.
Watch it.
So when someone goes through the program, it's like the Stephen Yellin / Betty Ford rehabilitation program. You are going to be detoxed because what you understand now is preventing you from ever really probably reaching your potential. So you have to get rid of these concepts. You have to get rid of these things that were ingrained in you. Oh, I have to live in Checklist City because if I don't get my hands in this position at the top, then I can't find the slot on the way down and I'll be too shallow. You have to get rid of all that. It's really, people say, it's even after they go, it is a detox. It's just getting rid of how to screw yourself up royally, okay, systematically, all right? Because you couldn't answer the question. The question you couldn't answer. If you can't answer this question, you have to go through rehab, detox. How is fluid motion produced? Why does it break down? And virtually anyone who's gone through the program absolutely knows that, absolutely is convinced that they have to do this. This is not a prerequisite. I mean, this is not an elective course. This is a required course. And some are able to do it better than others.
And you've talked about, knowing when you have that groove, when you've grooved your swing. Do beginners work with you as well? And is it more difficult for you to work with beginners because maybe it's lack of confidence in their swing?
Well, as I said, I'm not a swing coach. I haven't been certified. I have a basic understanding of the swing, but not as sophisticated enough to explain it to someone on a level that a PGA instructor would be satisfied with. But and for the most part, I work with elite golfers or average golfers. I do not work with beginning golfers. I suggest beginning golfers take at least 2 or 3 lessons from a competent local teaching pro. But the local teaching pro should also become certified in teaching my program because it will teach them to give them the correct mechanics without compromising the brain's ability to experience wholeness, which is the best of both worlds. Because a golfer, needs to be shown where the club has to be, needs to be shown how to set up the grip, all of this kinds of thing. But if you're doing it in such a way where you're making the star of the show, which virtually every instructor does with beginning golfers, then what you're doing is you're doing somewhat of a disservice to the golfer because you're compromising their cerebellum's ability to sync the other elements of the swing.
Wow.
So there's a way to work on the swing, even for a beginning golfer who's never picked up a club before, without compromising the brain's physiology's ability to experience wholeness. It's very subtle, but it works spectacularly well.
And where's the best place for a student of yours who's now had a lesson or two or is working with you to implement these elements? Is it on the course, on the range, in day-to-day life? Where do you feel is best way for them to work on that and proceed with it, progress?
Range and course. They need to experience the learning curve on the range, and then they have to test themselves. It's a litmus test on the course to see how much access do they have to that threshold level of wholeness when there's only one ball and there's tremendous ramifications in just hitting that one ball.
All right, we're going to talk a little bit now in this break about our other podcast, Golf Smarter Mulligans. But when we come back, Stephen Yellin of FluidMotionGolf.com, I want to talk to you about your program, the programs that you offer, and your books. And we'll do that after we hear this. Well, we only have 2 more Tony Manzoni episodes left this month on Golf Smarter Mulligans, but I want to thank those of you who've sent kind and positive comments about this wonderful man and the relationship that we built over the podcast. I take tremendous amount of pride in being the media outlet who, air quotes, discovered Tony Manzoni. This week on Golf Smarter Mulligans, Tony and I talk about some of the young women that he coached and what we can all learn from watching the LPGA. But as in all of our conversations, it went in a variety of directions.
We all get nervous, we all get anxious, and that never goes away, and hopefully never will, because adrenaline is a good thing if you use it properly. But if you set up to the ball properly, whether you're hitting the ball, chipping the ball, whatever, now your body dictates the distance the ball is going to go by its rotation and tempo. You can fine-tune this thing really quick, opposed to trying to time your hands when they turn over, how fast they turn over, and so forth. And those are the things that the modern swing, even though this is not really a modern swing, but it's a modern way of teaching. You watch the tour now. You look at the guys when they set up to the ball. You don't see anybody way behind the ball at address anymore. There was a guy by the name of Jerry Hogan that said, I want you to stand above the ball but not behind it. And that's a great statement.
That's Tony Manzoni on episode 105 of Golf Smarter Mulligans, being released this Friday. Learn more about Tony on our website at golfsmarter.com/Tony. His book, The Lost Fundamental, One Simple Move, Better Golf Forever, is available on Amazon, and his DVD of the same name can now only be seen online through our private channel. To gain access, please write to me directly by clicking on the Hey Fred button at golfsmarter.com. Both Golf Smarter and Golf Smarter Mulligans are free and available wherever you get your podcasts. Please follow both so that you can get a brand new episode of either when it downloads to your favorite listening device. Tell me about the programs that you offer for Fluid Motion Golf.
Well, the first program is you can buy my book. It's called Simplicity. It gives out the whole program. You can get it on Amazon. That's one level. The next level, which would be a more powerful level, is you can purchase my online program, which goes through the whole thing. And you hear how I describe it. And you can find those different levels of buying the program on my website, fluidmotiongolf.com. But if you have enough money in the bank, you can work with me in person. And that absolutely is the ideal. I travel. I'm not cheap, but it's worth every penny simply because it will change your golf game forever.
Wow.
Literally, it's a life-changing experience. And when I work with someone in person, I could see their body language. And based on their body language, I know exactly what they're thinking. I could see how they react to different elements of the program. I customize it more personal because, I'm seeing them in person. I know what they have to work on. The program includes a year follow-up, unlimited, over Skype or FaceTime or phone calls or whatever. And the people who have gone through that program literally have taken their golf game to another level, and they're at a swing prison. Two things happen. One, they become more consistent. And two, as important, they really enjoy the game more. They're not a mental and physical wreck as we sometimes are when we walk off that course.
Yeah, I've noticed that when I'm playing well, the game is much more fun. When I'm scoring lower, and fairway green, it seems to be much more fun when it's less frustrating.
Yes, the thing is that anytime you do something well, obviously you're going to enjoy it more. And anytime you don't do something well, it's going to, it's stress on the mind and the body.
Yes.
It's very stressful.
Very stressful.
You're going out for 4 hours, 5 hours, leaving your family at home if you have a family. And then you're walking off the course and you hit a lot of shots. You got so aggravated. I mean, what are you doing? Why are you spending 4 or 5 hours in this frustration? And then it's the 3 or 4 good shots or 5 or 6 good shots that keep you coming back. Well, how would you like to have 30 or 40 good shots, okay? So that's what the program offers.
It's interesting because usually when I get off the course and I call my wife and I'm on my way home, her first question is, was that fun? And I'm like, not today. It wasn't fun. It's like, yeah, it was fun.
Here's the thing, Fred. People, your wife knows by your vibe.
Yeah.
She wouldn't even have to call you. You just walk in the house and she will look at you and she will know, okay? So you should consider going through the online program. I'll give you a small discount, okay?
Thank you.
If you really want to break out your 401k, okay, I'll fly into Marin.
Oh, well, I appreciate the offer very much, but let me ask you this. What about the Golf Smarter community? What about our Golf Martyrs, as we call them?
How smarter are they, Fred? How smarter are they?
Okay. If they're listening to the show, they claim to be smarter.
Are they in swing prison, Mr. and Mrs. Listener? Okay. Yeah. So I'll tell you what I do. I've never really done this before, so no one has ever asked me. But I'll give you 10% off of the online program. If you buy it,
just mention Golf Smarter.
Just mention Golf Smarter, and you'll get that discount. And then
thank you for doing that. I really appreciate that.
No, it's my pleasure. You will be actually living in a smarter universe, so it'll be name and form. Okay.
Now, you just said a minute ago that you have the book Simplicity, but on your website I noticed 2 other books, Fluid Motion Factor and The 7 Secrets of World-Class Athletes.
I know, Fred. You have to do something with your time, don't you? So I wrote,
I like to play golf.
I wrote these 2 other books. The 7 Secrets is available on Amazon, and that includes other sports, golf, tennis, baseball, basketball. And it gives you an overview of other sports. The second book, The Fluid Motion Factor,
let me ask you about that. On the 7 Secrets, is it the fluid motion factor for other athletes, in other sports?
No, what it is, it's a background foundational book. It's not a how-to book. The only how-to book is Simplicity. That gives you step-by-step instruction. The other books are sort of foundational based.
I see. And tell me about Fluid Motion book.
Well, the Fluid Motion book, it's an interesting story how I decided to write that book. It's not available. Well, is it available? Yeah, no, it's available on the website. You can get it on the website.
Yeah.
It's a PDF, right?
Oh, okay.
So I'm giving David Ledbetter's son a golf lesson at Concession, where David teaches, one of the courses he teaches in Orlando. And David put both his children through the program. And they, especially his daughter, had tremendous success with it. She won the Southern Amateur after going through it.
Wow.
So I'm giving David's son a golf lesson, and he turns to me like in the middle of the lesson. He's going through the program, and he says, I don't like practice at all. Practice is very boring. And there was this light bulb that went off in my head that, I have to write a book, and I have to explain why, what's going on in practice and what's going on when you produce fluid motion. It was just like, it was a very interesting experience. I can understand, these inventors who'd like see a bird flying overhead and all of a sudden they invent, the next car electric battery or something like that. It triggers something. It just triggered something in me. So I wrote the book really quickly, 6 weeks. It just came out completely effortlessly. And it's a good foundational book. Simplicity just gives the practical application of the fluid motion factor book, of how to get there, what to do.
So now I'm really curious, with all this effortless motion and all the fluid motion that you've instituted into your life, what stresses you out? What creates for you the need for effort? Does that make sense?
Putting a mask on a plane.
Don't like that, huh?
No. I can't breathe.
Yeah. Well, luckily the air filtration on planes is really good. It's airports that freak me out right now. I haven't been in one in a year either.
I don't. Honestly, Fred, I'm a pretty laid back dude. Something is always going to press somebody's button, but I don't usually get aggravated.
Well, you sounds like you bought into the program too, the one that you've created.
Well, I'll tell you one more thing. Okay.
Sure.
It's an important thing. In 1975, I started the practice of Transcendental meditation, TM. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And I've been meditating regularly for how many years now? 46 years or whatever it is. Without learning TM, this program would never have been developed.
Sure.
And the reason why is that, another reason why it took so long to develop is that I had to become very familiar with that silent space we have in all of our minds and understand all its nuances. So the program really is very autobiographical because the mind is like an ocean. There are surface levels and there are deeper, quieter levels. And when you start experiencing these deeper, quieter levels on a regular basis, you understand the nuances of silence and you understand how dynamism emerges from silence. And the reason why I didn't develop this program 5 years after I realized what I had to do is that I had to become intimately familiar with that space of silence deep within my own mind, because essentially the program is just about teaching someone how to become quieter, more quiet, like what you said, calm. Well, calm wins major championships. Calm wins World Series. Calm wins Wimbledon and the U.S. Open. But that space has its own nuances, and you just can't march in there like a bull in a china shop and say, I want to be calm, I want to be silent. It doesn't work like that. You'll go the opposite way. So I encourage a lot of my people I've worked with to learn TM, which they have, professional golfers, and they appreciate it. It's a very, very valuable tool, not just for golf, but for life.
Well, it seems like an aha moment that meditation is something that is the complete base of the fluid motion factor, and everything that you've been through and everything that you've taught and learned from other athletes. How many of the elite athletes that you've worked with in all sports have a meditation practice? Is it consistent?
Meditation is mainstream now. It was for a long time. It was not yoga and meditation. Mm-hmm. There are many different forms of meditation. Meditation can either be concentration or contemplation. Like mindfulness is just watching your thoughts and being aware. TM is completely different. TM is effortless. It allows the mind to transcend. Now, with that being said, you can lead the horse to water. You cannot necessarily make it drink. But anytime I do recommend TM above all other meditation techniques, but anytime you close your eyes and you allow the mind to have some level of silence, there's going to be some benefits there, trust me. And people know exactly what I'm talking about.
Well, it's simple to say that this conversation was enlightening, Stephen.
Enlightening is a good word. Enlightenment is a good word, Fred, okay? It's one of my favorite words.
I really enjoyed speaking with you, having you on, and thank you for your generosity and giving that 10% discount to the Golf Smarters. We appreciate it very much.
Listen, it's an act of compassion, Fred. I want to get them out of swing prison. You're not enjoying golf as much as you could. I played a number of sports, really only tennis and golf competitively, but as a kid I played all the sports, In my mind, there is no greater thrill in sports on a subjective level than hitting a solid golf shot. It is a spiritual experience. I don't have to convince you. You've got, you're a golf podcaster. So if you can do that more consistently, think how much more enjoyable, not only golf, but trust me, your wife knows life as well. Because if you didn't have a good round that day, it's going to affect a lot of different aspects of your life.
Thanks so much for your time. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, it was great, Fred. Thanks for having me on. Appreciate it.
I'm not sure if that stuff works for you, but it makes a lot of sense to me. Reminds me a lot of our conversations with Fred Shoemaker of Extraordinary Golf, and Fred's got legions of followers all over the world who swear by what he does. You can find those interviews with Fred Shoemaker on Golf Smarter Mulligans. They were a long time ago, but I was able to bring them back. I thought it was really telling, though, that we seemed to finally get to the meat of the topic when I discovered that he's been into meditation for decades. As I am a native Californian and am pretty much sold on most of the woo-woo stuff, as I've heard a lot of East Coasters call Californians, oh, you're into woo-woo, I still haven't gotten comfortable with meditating, although I'm sure it would calm me down and focus me a bit more than I already am. Now, coming up next week is a really fun and interesting interview with the CEO of golfballs.com, Tom Cox. If you receive emails from any golf retailers, I'm sure you're going to find golfballs.com emails in your inbox. The conversation covered a lot of topics, from predictions for the golf industry as a whole, helping his 3-year-old getting into playing golf, to the bonuses of being a golf industry CEO and what that offers. Don't look for a lot of swing mechanics in this episode, just a couple of guys who love golf having an entertaining conversation. Now, as we get into the home stretch of reaching 800 episodes of Golf Smarter, which will be published on July 6, 2021, I've already looked at the calendar, I want to ask you something. You want to be involved? At this point, I'm going with your feedback and focusing the episode on what I've learned over the years. But I'm not sure who will be conducting that interview yet. Still looking, waiting to get some answers. But what I'd like to know from you is, would you be interested in joining in on a Zoom event? Maybe you have some questions for me, which I would love to answer. Or do you just want to stick to our normal format of having a conversation? Please let me know your thoughts and, of course, your suggestions. Follow at Golf Smarter in social media and check out our video episode teases on Instagram. It's a good way to share and introduce Golf Smarter to your friends, which I always appreciate. Also, please follow Golf Smarter TV on YouTube. And if you have any questions, comments, or suggestions on what you'd like to hear on an upcoming interview or those thoughts on episode 800, I'd love to hear from you. Just click on the Hey Fred button at golfsmarter.com.